Let's go.
Shantanu Naidu, Mr. Ratan Tata's millennial friend.
Shantanu, describe Mr. Ratan Tata in one word.
Kind.
One trait that you have displayed perhaps to have had this journey at the Tata Group.
Curiosity.
Talking about inspirational entrepreneurs, name some for us.
Bhavish Agarwal is definitely one of them.
One word for 70 hours working week comment.
Personal choice.
As a millennial, one word for social media.
That's a tough one.
Silence, that's what I'm getting. One word for AI.
Responsibility, I guess. The idolization culture is what is the issue. So we always want someone else to give us the answer that how many hours should I be working, and then someone who you look up to says these many hours you should be working, and then you want to follow just that.
The person joining us next, his designation is that of a general manager at Tata, but his identity largely is that of a social entrepreneur. He is an author, he is also a singer, but the one thing you know him most for is being Mr. Tata's millennial friend. Shantanu, thank you so much for joining us and talking to us. Is that a fair introduction to what your life is?
Heavier than what I would like, but fair.
Okay.
Nice to be here.
Shantanu, I'm quite intrigued by the different projects that you've been picking up, working with the Tata Trust. It is about, older people, lonely people at one hand. It is about strays and dogs the other. At a time, you're what, 30, right?
Yeah, 31.
You're 31. You're almost my age, and this is the age of a lot of...
We have always respected and revered the Tatas through not one or two, but 5 generations. Puts it in a different perspective for us of who we would like to.
There's a lot of younger folks today who would give an arm and a leg to be in the position you are in, to be at in midst of this vast pool of not just resources, but also knowledge and wisdom. If you were to talk to me about a couple of traits that led you to this position, which ones would those be?
I think if it all started with the story of motorpoles, it was one was technical and one was emotional. The technical one, which I love to tell people, is that a lot of people say, you ended up where you ended up because you were in the right place at the right time. And I say, yes, absolutely. That's the absolute correct answer, which means that you just need to put yourself in as many situations as possible for you to strike the right one. So I was always out there doing certain things, and some of them were quite embarrassing to look back on, honestly. But you never know which one is going to be the one that sort of opens that door, which is why you need to plant yourself in as many situations as possible. And the second emotional one was when you are doing something with complete heart, there is a way where people who also believe in that same cause to gravitate towards you or overlap paths with you at some point, somewhere, somehow.
So what is your message then to those young millennials at the moment who perhaps today, live in a world where there is no job security, there is no profession that is so-called safe or future-proof? To them who are looking at careers, looking at jobs, what is your advice?
I think, as tough as that sounds, and I'm sure it's a bit of a struggle because I work with a lot of Gen Z, especially in the senior care startup that we have. The age spectrum is between 18 to 24. So I'm exposed to them constantly. I think one of the great things that I have taken advantage of in this particular tough situation is to really choose something that gives you fulfillment. And I have seen these young folks give up on financially better off possibilities just to choose something that gives them something that aligns with their personal principles and personal values. Something that I would not have had the courage to do when I was starting off as a young engineer, for example. I went into engineering because it was safe, like you described it. A lot of my colleagues did, a lot of millennials did choose professions based on what is financially safe and what's going to create a foundation where we are not out on the street. But this generation has the courage to choose something that aligns with their personal values, that gives them a sense of fulfillment. And at the end of the day, they want to see what was it what was the impact that was created because of what I did at my job today? And if the answer to that is not clear or is murky or is a corporate wishy-washy answer, then they're just choosing to leave or not pursue that stream. And I think that's brilliant, because that's how change makers get made.
Talking about corporate wishy-washy, let's touch upon another subject which is very corporate nature, which is work-life balance. And I wanted to understand your take on that. We're again, like I said, binaries all around us. We have Narayan Murthy, 72-hour work in a week, compared to one that was mentioned in your book as well, where you said that one of the times that you were really held up by Mr. Tata was for actually making calls late in the night.
Right.
So where does that fit in?
I think there cannot be a singular answer, because company cultures, entrepreneurship cultures, individual cultures dictate the life of an employee. So for someone to say you should work for these many hours or you shouldn't, and then applying as a blanket rule across companies that have different cultures would not be right. So at the risk of sounding diplomatic, it really comes down to each company and its own culture. If you asked my personal preference, of course, there should be a balance. But if you asked if I myself have balance, no, I personally like to fill in my life with a lot of things. At the same time, I do not like to transfer that on to juniors or people younger to me or in the startup, because I want to give them the right idea of knowing that a job is what you do and it's not who you are. It's not your whole identity. It should not be your whole self-worth. It's a profession at the end of the day. Yes, it puts bread and butter on the table, and yes, it can be something you're passionate about, in which case all these barriers won't be visible to you, in which case just please go ahead at full speed. But to assume that everybody else will operate under that same passion is not something we should take for granted.
Freedom and choices for all. I think that's where we are getting.
Yes, and the idealization culture is what is the issue. So we always want someone else to give us the answer that how many hours should I be working, and then someone who you look up to says this many hours you should be working, and then you want to follow just that. But it really doesn't have to be idealization to a T. We have so many amazing entrepreneurs and so many amazing leaders in the country who you should be inspired by, and you should take the relevant inspiration from them. But to sort of clone your entire personality after a particular person you idolize will then end up in feeling this internal conflict of, is this the right thing? Should I be working these many hours? I want to be passionate, but I don't feel comfortable stretching myself that much. So,
Talking about inspirational entrepreneurs, name some for us.
I think Bhavish Agarwal is definitely one of them. The way he has built Ola, and honestly, I think for me, it's the entire entrepreneurial ecosystem and how it's sort of thriving off of each other is what is the inspiration to me, rather than an individual.
Your eyes are lighting up at the thought of Bhavesh and everything that he's doing. He's clearly not for work-life balance.
I know.
He's a workaholic, and he wants everybody to go down that road.
Which emphasizes my point that there are certain things that you idolize about some people and you take inspiration from, and certain things you don't agree on, which should be allowed.
How are disagreements happening when you are taking decisions along with Mr. Tata? How is that generational gap, and how do negotiations and disagreements happen there?
I don't think there are disagreements as such. I continue to work for him and he is a great boss. He's a great colleague to everyone. He's been a colleague to when I have seen him, and he has this way of allowing people to present their perspectives in full before everyone makes a conscious joint decision. Something that is so respectable and so statesman-like and so refined in terms of business that authority and hierarchy doesn't as much come through. Everyone who sees him is allowed to present that perspective in a respectable manner.
All right, enough of diplomatic answers over there. I'm expecting some fast-paced action now, Shantanu. Things that your generation
I am not good at this.
Describe Mr. Ratan Tata in one word.
Kind.
At 30, Shantanu is a social entrepreneur. He's used to be a social media influencer. He's a deputy manager. What do you plan to do when you are 86?
Have a big farm with sheep and dogs on it.
Okay. If you could go back in time and do one thing differently in your journey so far, which one would that be?
Probably spend more time with my first dog.
I see. Interesting. Okay, as a millennial, one word for social media.
That's a tough one.
Silence. That's what I'm getting. That's the
So many
word.
aspects that are evolving every day.
One word.
Responsibility.
Okay. Social media does more harm than good, true or false?
True.
How many hours do you spend on social media?
Too many.
On work-life balance then, one word for 70 hours working week comment.
Personal choice.
Okay. What's your take on dating and marriage then? Any pearls of wisdom there coming from the eternal bachelor himself?
Still learning.
Two attributes in an older generation that millennials miss today.
A set of principles.
Two attributes in dogs that humans don't have.
Oh, selflessness. Living in the moment.
Okay. One word for AI.
Responsibility again.
One trait that you have displayed perhaps to have had this journey at the Tata Group.
Curiosity.
And finally, the most difficult question of all, dogs or cats?
No, I can't answer that possibly.
All right, Shantanu, thanks so much.
Thank you.